Welcome to Nurse's View. Let's welcome our main host, Bina Bendale, with Emily Knife, Nena Hart, and Charyse Williams. Get ready for truth, heat, and voices that don't hold back.
Welcome, everybody. I just wanted to come back to the Nurse's View. And here we have Emily, Charyse, and Nena. And my name is Bina. So welcome back, ladies. How are we doing?
Fantastic. Hey.
Doing great. Thanks.
Yeah, doing amazing.
This is the first episode, and I want to, first of all, thank all of you ladies for being here and being part of this this journey, this fun little journey that we're doing. And I want to kind of share everybody the vision that I had with when this came to me about this idea about Nurse's View. I actually was having a conversation with Emily, and we were just talking about how there's no real space for nurses to really have a true conversation amongst nurses with the Nurse's View without having the backlash of, well, you said this and you said that and yada yada yada, and like this all this other, I don't know. It didn't feel like where it comes in. So I thought about the View, the View, and how it's been running, it's been beautiful. The people say what their mind is, and how, yeah, they get a little bit of political backlash, but not really. And how, like, there's no nursing platform besides the one we've co-created today, and how it's just a beautiful way for utilizing nursing and our backgrounds. All of us have very unique backgrounds on this particular call, and I'm going to have everybody introduce themselves with what they do in their backgrounds, and just to have a very raw conversation. And today the topic is really going to be focused around coaching. What is coaching? What is nurse coaching? What's bad coaching? What's good coaching? And what the fuck do we do with coaching? Because a lot of people don't know. And how entrepreneurship is not easy. It's a very hard road. And I think there's a lot of positive toxicity out there right now with how a lot of nurses and a lot of colleagues or other people are making coaching very easy, or they state that they're easy, and they're making it sound like it's just like getting candy from a candy store, when in reality, it's not even like that at all. So welcome everybody again. And Nena, I'll kind of start with you because you're on the bottom of my screen.
Sounds great. First of all, thank you for thinking of me. I appreciate that. If you guys don't know me, I'm Nena Hart, and I won't go too way back for you, but I started as a CNA in long-term care and worked my way up the ladder. I came home one night and told my husband I was going to become the DON of that place and fix all these problems. And long story short, that was not a super realistic goal on my part, but I did become the DON and do the best I could to turn things around. But I transitioned into hospice. I worked in corporate hospice, over 30 locations, and really got to see what the corporate life was going to look like for me. And, realized that that really wasn't what I wanted success to look like, but a little too late because I got fired from my dream job after 5 weeks, and we moved across the ocean to Hawaii. And that's how I started my self-employment journey almost 6 years ago now. And so I started working for myself as a consultant. I really didn't know what I necessarily offered, but I started with compliance and education for hospice, and I'm still doing that. And then I took over as president and acquired the National Nurses in Business Association in October of last year. So a little over a year ago now. And
Congratulations.
thank you so much. That was one of the harder things I've ever done, is stepping up to the plate and saying yes to that. When your job is taken from you, you don't get a whole lot of choice in the matter. You don't get to say yes or no. They tell you how it's going to be and you have to deal with it. But when you get to choose and it's something scary, it's a little different. I'm really happy to be here. I'm happy to be with you ladies, and I'm excited to see where this goes.
That's amazing. And thank you for sharing that, because I think when a lot of nurses feel that they got fired from a job, that they think that there's nothing else for them. I think there's this misconception around this world that's like, oh, you know what? I got fired. I'm a failure and I'm never going to do anything. And now I'm boycotted everywhere. And, nurses know everybody. So now everyone's going to make fun of me. And there's this whole like ripple effect of things that people go through, though, that this mind really captivates, right? And you're such a testament of how you turn something very challenging into something very remarkable.
It's
So I
very
want to
mental.
acknowledge that.
I
Yeah.
really believed that my job was what made me successful as a nurse. Just to be very transparent, my job was how I got my gold star and how I felt value and how I felt self-worth, because I could perform. If I just worked harder than everybody else, I could perform and show up and get promoted and get recognized. And that was how I got my self-fulfillment. That's how I defined success. And so when I lost that job, it was like this whole new self that I had to deal with that couldn't get that gold star anymore, that had to like live with herself and see what life was like now. So, I always say I'm embarrassed because I made my job mean that much, and you wouldn't think getting fired was such a big deal. Like, a lot of people have been fired before, but for me it was like catastrophic.
I think your story is very common.
Yeah.
I did like making your identity or attaching so much of your identity and who you are to your job. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I hear it a lot. I
But
hear a lot of people.
Yeah, but I think it's a beautiful thing too that you get to step in and start to relearn and rediscover. Okay, who am I? Who am I
It's been amazing.
outside of this job? So yeah.
Yeah.
And then you actually get to see more, I think, more of like what you're really made of and what goods you have inside that were never allowed to be displayed at your job because it didn't fit the role necessarily.
Yeah. And I had wanted a business for 10 years. I had been planning and trying and striving and doing all the things and just couldn't get myself to let go of my paycheck because it was guaranteed money that I had to have. I was the breadwinner. And so that forced me, when I lost my job, it forced me, like, there is no plan B here. This is what we're doing. And could have done it 10 years earlier had I been willing to let go of that guaranteed check.
Isn't that something when nurses are so reliant around that guarantee? And I get that for everybody, okay? Like, everyone's guaranteed money. Everyone needs money to put money on the table, right? But it's this like how nurses, and I'm going to get to everybody else's into things too, but I kind of want to chime into what Nina is saying here first, as it's on fresh on our mind, is you talked about value, like how we needed to showcase, like, oh my God, we reached that gold star. We got to put that gold star up. And I think a lot of nurses, they're very high level achiever people. Like, they need to be the best. They need to have those extra letters. Me and Emily on a previous podcast we were talking about chasing letters, right? And how like that defined us, and how like how our value is statued by how many letters we have behind our name, or what CRN is CCRN, and what, I don't know, whatever certifications they have nowadays, right?
Yeah. But that's the culture. I mean, like, that's the culture that we've been indoctrinated into. And it's, to me, it's always, and I just totally cut you off.
No, go.
Sorry
That's
about
the whole
that.
point. No.
But it's so interesting to me, again, because that's just the way we've been indoctrinated from the time we were like in nursing school. And then, if you, let's say you did, I think you said you started as a CNA, right? So, okay, CNA, and then maybe LVN or LPN, depending, and then RN. Oh, well, then maybe you did ADN. Okay, well, then BSN. Oh, there's NP. Okay, then NP. Oh, I can get a doctor. Oh, well, then DNP. I mean, it's like, it's never ending. And the crazy thing about it is that it's almost as if you're never enough. I mean, that's the messaging that's being sent, although it's not necessarily articulated, but I think that's the messaging and the undercurrent of the messaging that comes with the chasing of the letters, the chasing of the initials. Oh, and then of course you got the degree, but now let's get some other certifications. So it's, and I'll just tell you, because I work with doctors as well, but it's not just nurses, it's doctors too. It's so I think it's just healthcare, and I can't speak to any other industry, but I know it's just also prevalent in healthcare.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So while we're here, Charyse, why don't you introduce yourself and what you do, and then that kind of helps us guide what goes into the next conversation.
Sure. Yeah. So listen, I knew I wanted to be a nurse since I was in the 6th grade or 7th grade, actually. But anyway, I came right out of nursing school and started working in surgical ICU. I knew I wanted to be a critical care nurse. I thought I wanted to be peds critical care, but I changed my mind very early. Really? I changed my mind very early on. Well, you know what's really happened, if you want to hear the backstory, is that I applied in a pediatric ICU and I applied in a surgical ICU, adult surgical ICU. They called me first. So I said, okay, I'm adult critical care now. And then like a month later, pediatric ICU called. I'm like, oh man, I could have held out. But as a nurse, you just want that first job, that first real job. And so my entire nursing career was actually adult critical care. And so I did critical care for about 13 years. And right around the 8-year mark or so, I started to get a little antsy, if you will. And I ended up joining a network marketing company and quickly rose to the top 2% of that company. And I was in a leadership position with that company for 18 years. And my job was to educate, mentor, coach women on how to build successful businesses. And so I did that for about 18 years. But then I started getting antsy again during that 18 years sprint, and I left nursing altogether. But I started getting antsy, and I started wanting to not to be back in healthcare, but kind of be attached to healthcare. And so I started doing, I started my own consulting business where I would train Allscripts and Epic and all the EMR systems. So that was really, really fun. Yep. I did that for many, many, many years. And then that transitioned into project management. So instead of training the EMR systems, I started managing those multi-million-dollar projects across the US. And so I did that for quite some time, loved it until I didn't. Because I traveled quite a bit, and it was fun, but I traveled a lot, so I missed a lot, at home. And I'm sure all of us can attest to that. If you have kids, whether you work night shift or whatever the case may be, you've missed some things, right? And so you miss a lot. And so that didn't sit too well with me after a while. And then I started feeling like this tugging at my heart, and I was trying to ignore it. But I could not, I did ignore it. I said I did ignore it for many years, for probably 3 to 5 years. And because I thought God was calling me back to nursing. And I'm like, absolutely not. That is not what we're doing here. And at that point, I had been away from nursing from the bedside for probably 15 years. So I was like, no, we're not doing that, God. So I was like, la, 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 I can't hear you. And then finally that tugging became so strong and so intense to the point I could not ignore it anymore. And I finally said, okay, all right, I call it my surrender moment. I was like, okay, God, okay, what is it? Like, what are we doing? What's the next move? Because I'm miserable. I'm being tormented. I'm tormenting myself by ignoring you. And that's when he pulled me into holistic health. And that's when I started my holistic health coaching business. So I thought he was saying nursing. It was not nursing. It was still caring for people, but in a much different way, and in a way that was much more aligned with who I was at that point in time. And so launched my holistic health coaching business. I still run that business to this very day. And I started that right before COVID. The world kind of changed, of course, in 2020. And so I built my business I built my business online. And after about a year and a half, I started getting lots of inquiries. My inbox started getting flooded with nurses and nurse practitioners, even physicians asking, how are you building your business online? I want to do more holistic health coaching or functional medicine even. How do you do that online? So then they said, do you coach people? So back to coaching again. Do you coach and do you mentor? And I said, well, I can, because that was my job when I was in leadership with that direct sales company. That's what I did. I educated, coached, and mentored. So same skill set, different industry. So I said, yeah, let's do this. And so that arm of my business started. And so I run both businesses now, holistic health coaching as well as business coaching, specifically for nurses and nurse practitioners. So that's my journey.
Well, thank you so much for sharing.
You're welcome.
And that comes in because it's always interesting to hear people's the backstories, right? I think that's the other thing about a misconception in coaching is don't share your story, don't tell people what you've done, don't talk about your failures, where it's actually the complete opposite. And I think as we get deeper into this call, that's one of the best debunking that I really want to hit on is just this whole unveiling of the masks, right?
And I think
who you really are.
Right. I think it's so important too, because as we become more vocal about, again, our experiences, maybe past failures, and I don't even believe in failures. I look at things as either you win or you learn, but I don't look at it as win or lose or fail, pass or fail. But I think when we become more vocal and articulate what it is that we've experienced, good, bad, and ugly, it gives other people, other nurses permission to be more than just, nothing wrong with being just a bedside nurse. So I don't want to say just, but it gives us the opportunity and like I said, permission to say, oh, there are other opportunities out there for me. I don't have to stay at the bedside if I don't want to. Again, if you want to, cool. No, somebody's got to be there.
There's so many nurses and I want to top into this. I want to give Emily a chance to introduce herself here too, is there's so many nurses that, like, when me and Nena were talking about this, like how I didn't even know the NNBA existed until Nena took over.
didn't
Right?
either.
I was like, you've been on it for 40 years. I was like,
Same.
man, I'm 41. Okay. Like, where has this been? Where were you 5 years ago when I needed you? Like,
Yeah.
and like I can see nurses trying to reinvent the wheel, trying to make these other like things grow. But I'm like, let's stick to the basics what we already have, and let's cultivate those. Not stating that one's better or the other. I'm not stating that on this podcast at all. All I'm saying is quit reinventing the damn wheel, people.
Yeah.
Emily, how about you? Who are you and what do you do?
Well, I just
You're
want
too
to say
quiet on this
thank
call
you.
too.
Thank you, by the way, for doing this.
Yeah.
And yeah, I got like a text at like 1 a.m. or something. Or it was like
111. It was like 111, like 111 a.m. in the morning because I sent it.
Yeah.
I randomly sent it at 11:11 or 9:11, whatever time it was.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
That's
but
so
it showed
good.
up. Yeah. So it's like it was divinely
Mhm.
intervened. But yeah, I was just thinking like hearing everybody's background, it's just so cool. Like it's just so cool. Like the plethora of like this is just our stories, but if you literally like heard every nurse's story, holy cow, there's nobody that's the same at all. Especially with all the beautiful educational options that you can invest in, right? Like
Right.
nobody has this same like trajectory. I started in the Air Force as a medic, just a low man on the totem pole, did an awesome tour overseas for 6 months. And I was like, I gotta get out of here. But I was very into the identity of being an airman. So I was like Airman of the Year, Public Health Airman of the Year. I was Airman of the Month. Like I knew how to play the game, I guess you could say. And I loved that. And it gave me much pleasure and pride and kind of like what Nena was saying, like I put all my eggs into that basket and I was like, I'm going to be the dopest at this that I can be. And I did, and I was really good at it. But I think with that comes burnout. And so
yeah,
that point I was like, I don't think I want to do any more time in the Air Force. And my recruiter was like, well, you can become an officer or become a nurse, or you can just go become a nurse. And I was like, I don't want to be a nurse. I was like, I don't even want to be a nurse. And so I went to Ohio State and I was actually going for like an intervention specialist. I want to do like special ed and teaching and stuff. But come to find out, so similarly, our nursing and teaching, especially with the amount of like degrees and certifications, are very similar, which is very interesting. That could be a whole nother podcast that we can dive into. But so from there, I ended up dropping out of those programs and I was like, all right, I'm just going to go become a nurse. And so I went the private long drawn out route because I just didn't have good grades. I was like, I rather do stuff with my hands, which is so much of nursing. And I like fixing things with my hands and crafting things and the hand thing, right? And I just wasn't good with the didactic stuff. So I actually went the private route because they're like, there's no wait list here, but it's like a lot of money. And I'm like, cool, like, let's go. So I did my LPN, I did that for a little bit. And then a supervisor at a long-term care facility was like, you should go back and become a hire nurse. And I was like, oh, there's hire nurses. Okay,
Yeah.
back to go, right? And so then I went and got my ADN because I was like, again, they're like, you don't have the grades. And I was like, yeah, I've heard this before. So I went and got my ADN the long way, right? And after I graduated my ADN, I worked as a director of nursing. Thank God I had that Air Force experience because I think that really helped with that position. But I became a director of nursing for a home health company that was primarily addressing the population of Somalians in Columbus, Ohio. So all of our patients were Somalian. And here I am, this white lady coming in. They're like, who is this white chick coming in? And I was like, okay, I've got to go back. And I went to Ohio State for 2 terms and went and learned Somalian so I could speak to my patients because I'm like, I'm not coming into these people's homes like I don't know anything about you. Like that's not fair to them. So I became like part of their like I got invited to like weddings and births. I got invited into their
You're
homes.
fluent in Swahilian?
Huh?
Do you speak the language?
I speak Somali. Yeah, Somalian.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So I can
So
hold
awesome.
a pretty deep, like I've heard people speaking in the airport and I'll stop and just say something and they are like, what? How are you like this? It's funny. It's funny to hear a white person. I mean, just that's what it is. So, but yeah, I'd be like, Escaloren, and they're like, oh, like, so
That's awesome.
it breaks down the
The
walls.
immediate communication. I mean, the immediate
Yeah.
not communication, but the immediate I can't think of what I'm looking for. Inclusion.
Yes.
Inclusion.
Yeah.
Yes, it's so
Yeah.
important. It's so important. And I love that. And that's something I like learned from being in the Air Force and living all over the world as an Air Force kid. And it's just like to have everybody feel that acceptance, right? It's so important. So did that for a long time. And then after that, I got the itch again, as many nurses do. And from there, I worked hospice, pediatric, and adult. I did a lot of home health in lower socioeconomic areas. So a lot of places with like bed bugs, hoarders, they would be like, Emily's going in, and I'm like waking up at 3 a.m. with like PTSD,
Oh.
looking on my bed. I'm like, shit, do I have bed bugs?
Gosh.
Dude, that's like real talk. Okay. When you
You just
go
made
into
me
an
itch.
ER and you come up and we see head lice, bed bugs, and things
Oh.
falling out of you, ugh, like, ugh,
Oh, you're
it is
making me
not fun.
itch.
Makes
It's,
me fun.
yeah.
I don't miss that. I don't
Yeah,
miss that at
it can be
all. Like your
gross.
hair is up in a big old bun and we're putting like 5 different caps on and yeah, I don't miss
Paint
that at
suits.
all.
Yeah, paint suits and everything. So
Mm.
yeah, and I've never really I've always done other things other than nursing. So I'm kind of like a serial entrepreneur anyway from like high school
Yeah.
time. But yeah, so nursing's kind of always been like the second thing to me. Like, how else can I make money? I've always been like that on the side
Yeah.
things. So I've always like taught throughout the time I was doing home health and hospice and director of nursing. I've always been an academic as well. So teaching from private nursing schools to community college. I left Emory about 2 years ago now. So that was the last college I taught at. So it's been a very fruitful nursing career so far. And so now I run a community called Nurses for Nurses. And we put on festivals all over, well, the world now. In 2027, we'll be in London and Australia called Modern Nurse Fest. So just another
Nice.
way to like celebrate nurses. And it really focuses like on the nurse and not patient care. And that's why I love the National Nurses Business Association as well, because it's like it's focusing on the nurse, which is where it needs to be focused. Because when we have healthy, happy, wealthy, awesome, amazing nurses, then that trickles onto our patients, right? So
Absolutely.
that's a little bit about me, but yeah, let's get more into this.
Let me introduce now that I come up, let me introduce myself because I don't think I introduced myself in this. So many of you may or may not know me. My name is Bina Bendale. I have 3 beautiful children who are all on the spectrum. My house is fun, it's crazy, and it's fucking loud. There's a lot, okay? Actually, I've always known, I don't know about you guys, I've always known I wanted to be a nurse ever since I was a baby. Like I remember putting band-aids and pretend dolls and cutting up dolls and sewing it together. And actually, I wasn't determined. I was actually between being an actual physician and being a nurse. I went into bedside. I was actually at the VA, so I worked with military men for 5 to 10 years. And at that point, I went to charge nurse and things very quickly. And I remember even then, one of the physicians was like, "Hey, I passed my MCATs." I was like, "Hey, maybe I should go into be again." The doctor, that itch came in, right? I don't like that itch. That itch is like that damn itch. I'm like that. It's like that's a good thing and it's a bad thing, you know? It's like it's great, and then it's like, oh, what are we gonna do, or what's Bina gonna do? So I went past the MCATs, did really well, and actually was gifted a full ride to becoming a doctor, and I declined it. I actually declined it. I actually was, they were going to pair me and everything, and they wanted me to stay at the hospital, and they were all ready to go. And I declined it. I actually kept the letter actually in one of my containers, and it's just still in there. So it says, "Congratulations on your full ride." I decided not to do it. I wanted to stay at bedside. I wanted more hands-on. I became that nurse that all the interns and residents were scared of, and I was like, good. Good.
That kind of nurse.
It was that. I was that really overachiever bedside nurse. I wasn't the one to chase letters. I wasn't the one to come in. I was really, really determined from early on to make that impact at bedside and really help the families and really help like in that dynamic. And after I had children, Rohan, when my eldest was born, there was a lot of challenges. He was globally delayed. A lot of challenges comes up, and I was faced with the decision of either I quit my job or I'm able to go back to work. And unfortunately, I said, well, I can't quit because my kid's in ICU. I was the breadwinner, held the insurance, so I was like, we got to come up with something. I knew there was a needs to be a change at that given point again. I got my master's in clinical nurse leadership. I was actually 6 months away from my DNP. And then I said, nope, I'm not writing my dissertation. So I quit that again. And, a lot of times people would think that, like, oh my God, she's a quitter. She comes in. No, I was following my true passion. I didn't want to complete something that I know I wasn't going to serve me. Because initially, like even with my master's, I was an educator. I would teach at different hospitals, and I would teach at different levels. And I'm just like, why do I need my DMP? For what? What was this for? Like, and I had that really thing of like, is this truly serving me? And honestly, I met my husband and I was like, this is way more fun than getting my DNP. So we traveled. Yeah, we traveled. We had fun. We really really engaged in our relationship, because that to me, ever since I was younger, it's those relationships that's really was more meant for me than for me chasing letters. And so then after Rohan was born, I knew that itch came back to me, where there has to be something more here. Nurses cannot feel guilt because they call in sick. Nurses should not feel the shame where it comes up. We get 3 episodes a year, but when I use it up, it's like I've used it all up in the first month. Now, what the hell am I going to do for the next 11 months? It was miserable. Management made it very challenging. And so I was very fortunate that this particular manager, ER staff, they granted me 6 months of vacation, and they paid for my medical for about 9 months. So I was able to stay home without losing my job. But that's unheard of nowadays. Like, that's unheard of now. You don't get that type. And that's really when I realized what true leadership meant. Like, I faced it. I've felt it. I felt that love and that connection, because every time when Rohan was in the ICU and they saw that, my managers would come upstairs. Like, they would make sure I had food, I had water. They go, what else do you need? They would ask the physicians themselves, like, because, you hear one thing and it goes out the other, and they're like, we know she's not listening to you. Can we hear what you guys are saying? And I'm like, yeah, go ahead. And they're like, and then they'll be able to judge, like, she ain't coming back. She's not coming back for 2 or 3 weeks. Like, she doesn't realize like how complicated this is, or she's so tired that they would give me those couple of days off just to be able to sleep. And that's when I co-created the Silent Struggle Solutions, where I embed helping parents with special needs in corporations, because there's no help for us. Or at least 11 years ago, there was no help for parents with special needs specifically. Those parents, those stuff for the children and all that, but there was no program to really associate that guilt, that shame, that even coming to work was very challenging. I felt myself shifting towards parents. I was known to be really good with parents, and we had, pediatric codes and infant codes and all that. They'd be like, put Bina on the parents. When we had to tell the parents that their kids passed away, put Bina on the parents. And that's when I knew like there's more to life than this. And I couldn't figure it out until I realized like I started getting really good at business. I had no idea I was good at business. I just knew I can save your life. Like, honestly, I was like, hey, I can save your life. That's no, you need to put a needle in you. I got you. But when that comes in, and then when I became a nurse coach. I'm not going to be sponsoring the place that I went to, but I went to a nurse coaching program. And right after that, I knew that is what solidified me of like, this is what I was meant to do. This is where comes up now. How do I do this one to many? Because as many of you know, like I was doing the one-to-one coaching. I was like, this shit is hard. I was like, what is wrong with people? Who in God's name thought this was going to be easy? They make it sound like, oh my God, this is going to be easy. Just talk to anybody and they just pay you. And I'm like, no. Like getting those 6 clients like you need for it, was like, and I didn't even know that there's a whole other side. Like you didn't have to be a nurse coach, quote unquote nurse coach. You can be what I'm doing now very successfully without any certifications. Again, chasing letters, right? And so when I found out, and then I realized that I was pretty good at what I did, I realized that actually Dome Constructions, shout out to Dome, is their HR director or some I actually saw a post on Facebook that somebody was looking for a therapist for their organization. That's actually how I got my first gig. Everyone's like, "How did you land it?" I was like, "It actually ended up being a friend of a friend." Anyways, that comes up. I reached out to this person. I was like, "Hey, do you remember me when we were in our 20s?" Probably not. You know, maybe not. You know, maybe we had a little too much fun back then. But she's like, "Yeah, I remember you." And I'm like, "Hey, I'm not no therapist, but I'm a nurse coach." And she goes, "Oh, what is this?" And so I told her, and she goes, "This is interesting." She goes, "Let me forward this to my boss." And so I had two conversations with them. The first conversation I had with this HR director, it was during COVID. I actually had COVID. I was in a tank top. All three kids had COVID. They were three under three or five, three under five. I had a puppy. I had no voice. My hair was in a ponytail. My husband and me were felt like we were gonna die. And I'm sitting here going, I need to take this damn call. Like, I need to take this call. And I did. I showed up with no voice, with a tank top, talking about this. And she goes, "So, what is it that you do?" I said, "This. I make this normalize. I want to show up when people are imperfect, and I want to make the imperfect be perfect. And I want people to realize that you don't have to be perfect because none of my kids are quote unquote perfect because they all are ADHD or neurodivergent, however you want to
They're
link it.
perfect. They're
Yeah.
perfect.
You know what I mean? They're perfect in their own world,
That's
but I'm
right.
just saying, like, in other people's world.
Right.
And I kid you not, she literally 30 minutes later, she says, "Where have you been my entire life?" I'm like sitting on my couch with the dog jumping up. I swear I wish I had this on recording. And then she's like, "Okay, cool. I'm going to talk about this. Let me bring this up and I'll give you a call back." I'm like, "Great." Got an email less than 24 hours later with "What's your pricing?" Sent her my pricing, had no idea how to write a business proposal, didn't have a brand, didn't have a website. I didn't have jack shit. Okay, I want people to hear this.
You just figure it out.
Nothing. I had an idea, I had a thought process, and I was like, I'm just gonna go do it. And luckily, my husband's side of the family is very smart. That was very helpful to help me put things together super quick. So I was able to put it out. And the next 2 weeks later, she's like, "Done. You're in." And I'm like, "That's it?" She goes, "Yep, this matches. This comes up. Send over. I already signed your proposal. It's already comes up." And then I'm like, "You do realize this is like, if everyone signs up, this is about $500,000." She goes, "Yeah." And I'm like, I sign up. I get off the call. My husband's like, "Who are you?" I'm like, I don't
But what
know.
you're talking about right now holds so many nurses back from even trying because
Yes.
it's like you were talking about, Charyse, that ingrained belief that we are not enough, that we're not professional enough, we're not business enough, we're not knowledgeable enough, we're not prepared enough. And so since they're not enough of any of those things, they don't try. And it's like Bina just said, she was on her couch in her pajamas with COVID and the dog barking and signed a $500,000 deal. And
Right.
I'm over here, got fired from my job yesterday, took an interview call from a doctor and got my first consulting contract that way for $188,000 that year. I had no business plan. I had no contract. I had no pricing. Same concept as what you're saying, but they aren't willing for that not to work out. They aren't willing for that to be called on the carpet sometimes and say like, what if it doesn't work out? Well, then it doesn't. And you talk to somebody else and take the next phone call. And I think that it's really scary to show up imperfectly and to be unprepared and to be like not knowing what's going to happen and still show up. And I think that's huge. And I think what you're sharing in your story is how so many of us have started by just taking the phone call and just sending the email and not knowing like, are they going to laugh at this? They could have opened that email and be like, $500,000. Our budget is $10,000. I know the company you were with did not have a budget and you probably had a good idea of that. But sometimes You know,
You don't know.
sometimes I'm throwing out pricing and I'm like, this is how much it costs, and I know how much time it's going to take, and I'm not willing to go down. And sometimes that's not in their budget, and that's okay too. But what you're talking about is just, it's really impactful for me because it redirects us back to understanding that like the relationship is what actually these companies are looking for. They're looking for a human to connect their employees to and to have a relationship with.
Right.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Emily.
No, I was just going to say it takes a lot of, I didn't know. It takes a lot of courage to be willing to take imperfect action. And here's the thing, I get it because again, as in nursing, you have to be prepared. You need to be over prepared. You need to know what A, B, C, I mean, because it literally could be the difference between life and death. So
Right.
I get it. And even though I get it, I'm not going to say, I don't like the word have to, but we get to be willing to do it imperfectly. And if it works, great. And if it doesn't, you're going to live. You'll be okay. I always say, listen, you're a nurse. You can always
let's back up a little bit though. In nursing, at bedside, let's be real. There's a lot of imperfections on the bedside.
No doubt. Absolutely.
Even though it says A, B, C, and D, you all know us nurses are going from A to D to C to F to G to H, and all that shit. As long as that patient's alive, we're all good.
Keep them alive.
And if we're taking bad direction from someone else as an employee, that's okay. But we can't give ourselves the opportunity to do something wrong, right? Like I can take some really bad direction from a doctor who thought it was CHF and treated for some COPD, whatever. We do things that we think are the right thing as an employee, or that we know aren't the right thing as an employee. Sometimes, like, this is stupid, makes no sense, and is feeling kind of unethical, but I'm an employee and I have to, even if it's right, or I lose my job. So I'm just going to shut my mouth and do it and hope for the best. But for ourselves, we're afraid to make a mistake.
And I think, like taking the risk, like when you take the leap, you guys, it's so cool. And I think this is a really great example. When I worked at Emory in the university nursing school, when I taught, I was getting paid $38 an hour. Okay. The students were having mental health problems and I saw it, and I was like constantly coaching them and talking with them off hours, putting in my own work and time. And I was like, I'm going to make money on this shit. So I went to the nursing school and I was talking to them and they're like, yeah, it's not in our budget. We don't have, obviously, we know that story, right? And I was like, well, I know who has the budget, student services. So I went to student services and I pitched them this somatic nurse coaching for twice a week, and it would just be for an hour with me. We would do meditation, somatic, breath work. The students loved it. I had up to like 150 students on it one time. And they're like, how much per class? And I was like, I don't know, it's $1,000, unlimited students an hour. That's all. And they were like, okay. And I was like, what did I just do? Like, who am I? Like, Bina, like you were saying, and it's literally like, we are indoctrinated, like you said, like to believe that we can only be capped at so much.
Exactly.
And it's an energy. It's not even, it has nothing to do, right? It's an energetic thing.
I was gonna say, go ahead, Bina.
I'm just gonna come up. It's really also really truly about sometimes just putting yourself out there and just not thinking too much about it. Like when I gave numbers out, like I was shooting the sky. Okay. I was like shooting the sky. And now that's like my normal, like I've done now just in general, I've done $10 million in sales over this past 5 years. And I've grown my corporate nurse coach accelerator, teach other nurses to do this in a very loving, fashionable, easy flow way. Not this like, hey, I need this. And wait, hold on. What is this? And I'm like, dude, go make the messy action. I can clean you up, but I can't go make it for you. And I think there's this whole other misconception about pricing, which will be a whole nother podcasting. That'll be a separate podcast. You guys stay tuned for that one, because that's a whole hour deep dive that I think the four of us could go in for hours. But you can price whatever the fuck you want. I don't think people realize that there's no wrong answer to that equation.
And the only limitation is the limitation you put on yourself. And I know it sounds cliche and it sounds like a platitude, but it's the truth. We're the one who limits it. We're like, I don't think that you don't know the budget. You don't know. I always say, don't count other people's money. You don't want anybody counting your money. Don't make assumptions on what someone can do. I don't care if it's one person or if it's an organization. Don't make assumptions. You decide what it is that you want, state it confidently, unapologetically. They can either counter or
Yes.
decline or
Yeah.
accept.
Yeah, exactly.
And you throw out your number and you're so uncomfortable. You're afraid this is so high. They sign it, send it back, and don't bat an eye. And you're like, I could have doubled
Gone
that.
higher. Exactly.
I could have doubled
Exactly.
that and fought my way back down. You know
That's
what I mean?
right.
Like,
That's right.
It's the truth. It's
Exactly.
the honest truth. Like when I pulled what nurse coaches in general would say, I pulled off a very impossible situation. Being one of the first nurse coaches to actually go into a corporate space the way I've done it, it's very, but it's not impossible. And that's like what I want to tell people is that it's this out of the box thinking. If we stop thinking so linear and start thinking out of the box, possibilities just start shining. Me and Emily had this on our last podcast, like one of my last podcasts I had with her, is like we were talking about that, how possibilities just arise when you just let it be and don't try to force it. It's just like, I'm gonna state this, okay? I'm gonna state this very unclearly. It's like
State
trying
it,
to have
girl.
sex for the first time and you're just not comfortable and you're like, yo, like, can we just like either we gotta get this going or we need to try again? Like, or it's really good. Like it's like that first uncomfortable sex.
Yeah.
You know?
It is,
It's
yeah.
like it's the same thing. I'm like, it's a relationship, Nina. I didn't mean to make you blush.
I was like, man, I can't even remember that far back. Feeling old over here, Bina.
But it's like when you think about it, right? It's like it's that relationship with feeling uncomfortable, or how vulnerable you are when you're having that first intimate contact with your partner, right? That vulnerability, like some people are like, oh, the lights have to be off, or some people are like the lights can be on, like all these different things that go around it. I just tell people you just kind of you have to get over the first time. The minute you get over the first time, like the emotions, the evaluations, all the other stuff just goes away. It's just like having sex the first time. Get over it. Let's
And
move
you
forward.
realize, oh, I'm not going to do it that way again. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
you're like, okay, I didn't like that. That didn't feel good. I'm not going to do that again. And I'm still having, I think what a lot of nurses like don't realize is like that doesn't go away after your first year in business or after your
No.
first client. I had one of these moments this week with a client, and I came out of here from a call with a client and I told Jed, now I know I'm not going to do it that way again. Next time, I'm going to come to them with a totally different approach and say, this is how I like to do it. Will that work for you? Instead of just accepting whatever's handed to me.
Yeah.
And even in services that still work for me, I'm growing and learning how I like to work and how I like to interact. And I can even pivot even now, 6 years later, and say, actually, I learned that I don't like that and I'm not going to do that next time. Next time, I
Yeah.
won't give that as an option. Right. And you just keep refining as you go to learn how you like it and how you don't.
Yeah.
That's right.
And
Yeah.
and that's the best part of this particular journey on the nurse's view for everyone that's listening, because we're going to wrap up this first episode, is really truly the raw, the good, the bad, the ugly about nurses, about our views, and about coaching in general and other topics that may be coming down the line, down the pipeline. And stay tuned for the second episode.